Hi, I'm Brenna Quirk, a senior online course developer at InterSystems. In this video, we'll talk about the Coverage Requirements Discovery, or CRD module of InterSystems Payer Services. CRD lets providers connect to a payer's backend to evaluate whether payer coverage rules apply to a service, orders, or appointments. When a provider is about to submit an order for a service, CRD will check against the payer rules to determine whether prior authorization is required and whether any further documentation is needed. CRD is triggered in provider workflows like scheduling or ordering. If CRD determines that documentation is required for a service, DTR, or Documentation Templates and Rules, can then retrieve the necessary forms. And if prior authorization is required, PASS, or Prior Authorization Support, can handle submitting that request. CRD evaluates a patient's coverage for a service and evaluates the service against the payer rules. It then returns CDS cards to the EHR. These CDS cards may include links to clinical guidelines like PDFs or web resources, and if needed, can trigger DTR for further documentation. CRD also supports optional prefetch capabilities. This means that the EHR can send in relevant FHIR information along with the initial request if the EHR supports this. This will lead to faster response times. When deploying CRD, there are a few things that you'll need to configure in your JSON config file. This includes HTTP services, which tell CRD how to connect with your backend payer systems. You'll also need to configure OAuth, client and server configurations, and SSL settings for secure communication. During this configuration, you can also set up production settings if needed. And finally, CRD-specific allow lists. These allow lists define trusted authentication servers. You'll also need both Java and Python for CRD. CRD is accessed through CDS hooks like order sign, order select, and appointment book. For example, if a provider is finalizing an MRI order, they might send a CDS hook to order sign. CRD will check with the payer and might determine that prior authorization is required for this request, and it will then send a CDS hook back to the EHR. CRD does not expose standalone FHIR endpoints. It always works through CDS hooks. Behind the scenes, CRD communicates with the payer to get information about prior authorization and documentation requirements. It then uses this information to build a CDS card, which is sent back to the EHR. A mock mode is available to return canned responses without setting up the entire backend integration. Through these capabilities, CRD helps providers get requirements upfront, improving workflow efficiency and reducing unnecessary prior authorization requests.